Welcome back to this BLOCKTV special edition following a deep slump in the crypto markets. The price of Bitcoin constantly falling, currently trading below $8,300, and the rest of the market even further in the red. Total market cap down by roughly $30 billion on the day. The news of the drop made headlines all across the international financial press, and BLOCKTV's senior correspondent Asher Westrop Evans is with me to share some of them and perhaps break them down, see what else is going on in cryptosphere. Let's start with some of the major business publications.
Certainly. So kicking off with Reuters with the headline, Bitcoin drops to more than 3-month low, briefly trades below 8,000. This article was a classic paint by numbers, just saying it like it is. But obviously Reuters, when they talk, everyone listens. You know, they briefly touched on a few of the narratives that could be driving some of this market sentiment, most notably the sort of tepid response to the backed launch, saying that could be playing into it. And they touched generally on the overarching points. It's down over 35% since August peaks at around 14,000. And generally that we've started seeing this downtrend. But they noted one of our favorite analysts, Matty Greenspan, at the end, stating that this is a classic case of buying the rumor, selling the news, a narrative we've heard a lot, particularly in relation to the backed launch. So that's something they really were focusing on as a potential cause for this.
And it's, nobody knows for sure. That might be part of it.
Exactly.
And anyway, the fact that Reuters, the news agency, is covering this means that the story is likely going to get in front of a ton of eyeballs on all syndicated websites, newspapers, television shows. People are going to be talking about Bitcoin.
Certainly, it's going to be back in the headlines, perhaps for all the wrong reasons, but regardless, back in people's eyes and minds. And of course, they weren't the only ones talking about it from the major financial sort of outlets. Forbes as well, another sort of fairly clear article. Bitcoin price collapses by more than 15% in an hour.
Showing that horrid-looking chart.
Yeah, that terrible-looking chart. The article, again, itself just really laying out the facts, what happened here, putting it a little bit in context. A key point that they had, one of their sub-headlines in that article states that altcoins looking even worse. So playing into that narrative, Bitcoin might be down, but it's a bad time to be an altcoiner right now. They're suffering some dark days indeed. As Bitcoin's been up and about the last few weeks, sort of holding its ground at around the 10,000 mark. Altcoins were just taking hit after hit with only brief resurgences, and now it's falling even further. So playing into that narrative, Forbes certainly sort of taking that note to say that Bitcoin might be bad, but the others are much worse.
And similar line from
Bloomberg. Yeah. So we're going to Bloomberg now. It's the headline: Bitcoin drifts lower as cryptos stabilize after early plunge. So there, interestingly, and this might be a timing element, but they did address the positivity. We've had some stabilization. We're heading around that 8,000 mark, and it bounced back. Now
it looks like it's
creeping back down. But again, it's as some of our favorite analysts love to say, it's the elevator up and the staircase down. There is a little bit of resistance. Those hodlers are hard to turn off the market, and they don't necessarily flee as you would see in a lot of other asset classes. People will hold on. They will try and fight those resistance, and you get, I don't know if I would call them even bulls at this stage, but those hodlers that won't leave their trades, won't leave their share in the market.
Yeah, and obviously we'll be following out throughout the day and the rest of the week, see where the price is going, and if it's able to stabilize at some point. Last one, not Bitcoin related, but definitely on point here.
Yeah,
right?
This is an interesting one. So this is the Wall Street Journal making a point that gold climbs to highest point in more than 2 weeks. Now, yes, as you say, not a mention of Bitcoin in this article, but interesting for our purposes because of this ongoing narrative that had been espoused, particularly in the first half of 2019, that there is a correlation in terms of safe haven assets between gold and Bitcoin. Can I tell you, that narrative seems to, at least in the short term, have been blown out of the water. Gold may be climbing, and as the Wall Street Journal points out, on the back of a lot of political concerns, whether it be talking about impeachment proceedings in the United States or various financial concerns from around the globe, gold seems to be on an upward trajectory. This does not obviously seem to be the case with Bitcoin.
So we kind of hope or think that all the same reasons would cause people to put their stake in Bitcoin or other digital assets. Not.
It hasn't proven to be the case yet. Maybe it's that lack of institutional money. Maybe it's the fact that BAC didn't sort of drive that narrative forward. Whatever it might be, there is clearly a lack of faith in Bitcoin as a safe haven asset at the moment, and for whatever reason, people aren't willing to sort of take on that narrative wholesale, or institutions aren't willing to take on that narrative wholesale, and it's seeing a sharp contrasting. I think we can say clearly for now, Bitcoin is still an uncorrelated asset.
All right, but of course that's not the only thing that crypto press or Cryptosphere press was talking about in the last few days. A bunch of big news stories that would be dominating had not we seen this deep drop in the price of Bitcoin and other digital assets. Let's go through them, starting with kind of a major announcement yesterday, or a semi-major announcement yesterday by the SEC. That they're delaying another Bitcoin ETF proposal.
Certainly, the SEC has decided to delay the Wilshire Phoenix Bitcoin ETF proposal. Look, I mean, it's major in the sense that nothing's growing, nothing's happening, there's another delay, but again, I mean, it's expected, Ron.
Right, this is a procedural thing.
Exactly. We heard the SEC, the full commission of the SEC speak before the House Financial Services Committee yesterday, in which none of them sounded particularly bullish.
Well, we have a soundbite from Jay Clayton talking about the ICO boom of 2017. Let's give it a listen. Take it from there.
We have a group at the commission that is focused on digital assets, both the potential they have to add efficiency, but also the risks they face. And look, we saw this in the quote unquote ICO space. $4 billion, pick your number, raised, most of it gone. Not complying with our rules. I think we had a great effort from our Division of Corporation Finance, as well as our enforcement division, to say, hey, if you're selling securities, you got to follow our rules, and we're gonna do the same thing across all digital assets that touch in the security.
All right, so that does not sound like a man who is
on the cusp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we know. All right, they delayed the Phoenix Wilshire Phoenix proposal. This comes just days after VanEck pulled their own proposal, anticipating, I guess, a rejection. But also in the same week, the Bitwise, this is another ETF proposal that's in the works, is pretty bullish on their chances, or at least.
Well, they're certainly putting on a brave face, Ron. I mean, they're suggesting that the market fundamentals have changed and they're ready to go. I find it hard to believe that they're going to get what they wish for, particularly with the sort of volatility we've been seeing today in the market. That is something that is of deep concern to the SEC, particularly as well that no one can really pin down why this volatility is occurring. That sort of would spark the concerns of market manipulation that the SEC is so concerned about and about regulating for and making sure they can keep protections against. That's the sort of role the SEC is meant to play in protecting investors and protecting them from manipulated markets. Whether or not this is manipulation by a definitive term, they will most likely see it that way. So I find it unlikely Bitwise is going to get their proposed wish.
And are they going to pull it themselves, or are they going to wait for this?
I mean, it would be a certain about face. They've really dug their heels in. They've doubled down with their statements to the SEC. A full 31-page report they released, talking about the strength of the market, talking about how the time is ready, the market is ripe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Remains to be seen.
Yeah. That journalistic cliche. All right, next up we have an interesting story from Trust Nodes.
Yeah, certainly. This is a really fascinating one. Bitcoin's hash rate suddenly crashes by 30%.
And I think they might even be conservative there, that it actually crashed even further.
Right, exactly. So it's a fascinating story, most prominently because, I mean, this is the sort of fundamental security, stability elements that make,
fundamentals.
Exactly, the fundamentals of the marketplace itself. This is what's making Bitcoin, giving its credibility, giving its security, and for it to suddenly tank 30%, it doesn't bode well in terms of securing the overall market as a whole. And this is something Trust Nodes is eager to point out. But that being said, they are ready with narratives as to what could have happened here. Most notably, they say, as it's the rainy season in China, where so much of Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin's hash rate is centralized, they say that it could have just been that a warehouse, a farmhouse was flooded effectively. The actual physical flooding of
possible
of an industrial warehouse, and that took a whole bunch of miners offline.
30% or a quarter, a third or to more than that of all hash.
Right, it's a lot. And then we've heard other theories floated that perhaps actually this was simply a reporting error, because since this article was released, the hash rate has since recovered back to roughly where it was before. so that it could have just been some element of the reporting between the miners themselves and coming into the actual
nobody
graphics.
cleared flooded Bitcoin mining farms in this time period. So
Exactly. No, exactly. If that was the case, then that power would be gone. That being said, there's also the simple fact that should that much hash rate be taken out of the market, it would probably become very beneficial for a lot of miners to input more hashes into the market, more computing power dedicated to mining, as they would want to make up, get their chance at that pie, that sort of newly reopened pie. So the market itself has actually proven, the mining market itself has proven itself resilient, capable, whether this was a reporting error or this has been a reallocation of resources now that there's a little more space there. Certainly miners are still on track, and while this is a lagging indicator, hash rate usually comes behind, there are many more miners still set to take on new positions and open new machines in the coming weeks and months ahead. Many orders still in play, so it looks like the hash rate will grow for at least some time.
On the supply side, we're going to be okay. We'll see about demand. All right, next up we have a potentially huge adoption story coming out of France.
Yeah. Bitcoin to be accepted in more than 25,000 new locations in France. This is pretty exciting. There are a whole lot of partner companies from the digital payment sector have come together and are going to enable 25,000 stores to begin accepting Bitcoin across France. Now, France, it's been very active in both the public and private sectors and very bullish on Bitcoin, very bullish on cryptos as a whole, starting to set itself up and angle itself as a bit of a leading player, particularly in the European market. Now getting it to those brick and mortar stores, getting it there so people can actually use it day to day. Again, this is a case where the supply will be there. Will the demand? Remains to be seen, but should that demand pick up, it's good to have that ecosystem, that structure in place, and I think that that's very critical.
There was a similar report, I think it must have been over a year ago now already, where French tobacco shops would be accepting crypto. This is a different case. We're talking about chains of stores and retail, so it's not. A bit of a different story there.
But with a real time frame, I must say, which is, a lot of these stories get floated and never quite cap into eventuality. This has got a set time frame for Q1 2020 that they expect these stores to be online. So that's an ambitious, rapid turnaround, getting a lot of people set up into the crypto markets, and maybe this is the onboarding people need. You start seeing that Bitcoin accepted here sign everywhere, and you go, hold on,
all right, I can use
why don't I just use that? Particularly in France, one of the most visited countries in the world, one of the highest rates of tourism in the world. If I'm an international tourist and I want to come over, and I've got my Bitcoin wallet all set up, don't need to exchange a thing.
Don't need those euros until Libra gives us a global coin. A good substitute. Another story coming up from a different part of the world, from Japan.
Yeah, well, now you mentioned Libra. It's a nice segue here. The Bank of Japan governor says that Libra needs globally coordinated regulation. This is Japan flexing their regulatory muscle there, their crypto muscle again. Japan has angled themselves to be leaders in the crypto space when it comes to that government regulation framework, and they've proven themselves time and again willing to take those steps. Interesting to see that the governor of the Bank of Japan coming out now and making such concrete statements about Libra, saying that things need to really happen. You need global coordination.
Well, a global challenge to a global solution to a global challenge.
Interesting to see if it'll be possible right now. The current sort of global diplomatic slate at the moment is not as clear cut as it has been perhaps in years past.
Although it seems that when it comes to Facebook and Libra as a result, there might be more, they might see more eye to eye than on other topics.
Perhaps so. I mean, look, there's certainly consensus, it seems, in a sense of bipartisan, both left and right, across global spectrums tend to be a bit concerned about Libra and Facebook's role in it. And also, yes, as you say, across so many different countries and jurisdictions, there are deep concerns about Libra. That being said, just because there's a consensus in sort of manner, is there a consensus in style, in the way that they go about dealing with this?
Did he propose any specific measures that should be taken, or we'll sit down and discuss that?
Exactly, this is more to be discussed. Saying, and I quote, if Libra is introduced, it could have a huge impact on society. So laying out the framework for a global coordination in those bare bones sense, but perhaps still an important step to say, this is coming, we need to take this seriously.
And we know that Libra itself is kind of brushing aside those concerns or those suspicions. repeatedly saying, David Marcus was tweeting out how, we're not a threat to sovereignty, we're not a threat to currencies, trying to put everybody at ease. I don't know if that message is coming through.
If you keep pushing the line, maybe it becomes true, but maybe not.
All right. So we spent a lot of the morning talking about Bitcoin. Last story kind of points us in the direction of the opposite side of the crypto market, right?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So the headline: 640 crypto projects have failed to publish a single line of code this year. It's pretty damning.
Yeah.
And that's pretty damning. And that's coming from GitHub and development activity reports, which are showing that there's just a lot of these startups that are sitting there not doing the sort of coding and development work that they claim they want to be able to do, not doing that innovation that they so claim they're at the cutting edge of. I mean, it's interesting. This is a story likely to play into the Bitcoin maximalist narrative that they've got what they need. Bitcoin is the perfect coin or the best we've got, and it should be the main focus. And all these startup projects are simply scams set up to pull people out of their money, or at worst scams, at best projects that people haven't thought about properly and are just sucking up resources. Interesting to see that there is.
And what we're talking about again, ICO bubble, 2017 projects that were left behind or initially planned out to be like one and done kind of thing.
Exactly. And not developing new code, not getting that new level of innovation in the sphere, I guess will be seen as a bit of a detriment against a lot of these sort of newer projects starting up. Anyone trying to get newly into the space, people are going to start to be a little bit more skeptical that something needs to be coming out.
Well, we shall see. In any case, 640 projects dead in the water. Asher, thanks for bringing us those headlines from across the cryptosphere. That was excellent. We're going to be right back with more on this day. BLOCKTV, don't go anywhere.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.